you need to know that if you want to be successful when you're hiring an ISA, you have to have communication. You can't just sign off and say, okay, I'm just going to now disappear for 3 months and hoping that all these deals are going to come out. Like, it's just that's just total failure there.
I mean, I've noticed too, there's a common thread. The agents that do the best are the ones that they over communicate, where they're almost like they're sending us emails consistently. They're giving us, we're getting an email every other day from them, or, every couple of days, we're setting up a weekly meeting with them. Communication is key. It's like everything. It's the cornerstone of every relationship. If you've got a relationship with someone, but you're not communicating with them, chances are that that relationship won't go as smoothly as you'd like. Welcome to Business Insights with Matt Milia. I'm your host, Matt Milia, and in this podcast, we'll talk about the real, raw, uncut business success secrets you won't find anywhere else. Follow my journey from entry level to CEO. We discuss real actionable items you can plug into your business right away. To subscribe to our weekly top tips, you can go to www.mattpodcast.com and join our community of elite high-level performers. And if you're interested in our inside sales company, you can go to www.appointmentstoday.com to jump on a free strategy call. And now, stay tuned for our podcast. Hey, everybody. The world wants talent, and I have one of the best talents here on the call with me. That is Mr. Chad. So welcome, everybody, to... There we go. Now I'm in focus. Welcome, everybody, to Business Insights, episode number 19 with Matt Milia. And I've got here Mr. Chad Ratcliffe, who is joining us. And Chad, why don't you let everyone know a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name is Chad Ratcliffe. I am the head trainer and coach with Appointments Today. I've been with the company for now over 3 years. In the past, I have over 15 to 20 years sales experience in the car industry, ranging from when I started off when I was like 19 as working on cleaning cars, worked my way up to a sales executive, business manager, sales manager, everything. I've also worked in finance with banks, selling mortgages, debt collection, that type of thing with banks. And I've also run my own business in Asia for several years. And now I'm working remotely with Appointments Today, and I'm having a wonderful time.
That's awesome. So you've had a lot of different experience in different places. One of the things that actually kind of makes me wonder a little bit, and it's a common thread, it sounds like every place you've gone to, you've moved up through the ranks. What are some ways that people that are listening, or if you had to give advice, if you were giving advice to someone, what are some ways that you could help somebody or show them how they could potentially move up the ranks, when starting with any company?
Well, you got to be driven. You got to have that goal to succeed. Like, I'm the type of person that I'm extremely competitive. I was the sales guy that not only knew exactly where I was positioning and how many, more deals I needed to close to get to the higher percentages, but I knew everyone else's, because I knew where everyone else was behind me. Because that, to me, there's only one place, and it was first place. I didn't want to be second, so it was like always striving and pushing to get to the top.
Love it. Chad is the man from Kristen. Kristen, thank you for. She's tuning in today, but she's a little under the weather, so I told her to get back to full health. Everyone's got some sort of cold or flu bug or something crazy going on now. But so Chad, of course, with you being a leader within the organization, and I mean, really, it's funny because you started really as an ISA and then moved up from an ISA to an account manager, and now essentially you're pretty much managing the whole sales force. So tell everybody that, of course, maybe not familiar, what is an ISA? What is that role? What does that even stand for?
Well, an ISA is inside sales agent. So the ISA's job is to, I don't want to say work, to work the leads for an agent or a brokerage. So that's being like, even if it's buyer leads that are people that have registered on their website, working expired, sale by owner, any of these other platforms that generate leads, for home valuations. But they're the ones that do the calling and basically set up the appointment or have to nurture the prospect until that point where they're ready and motivated to move forward and make that appointment.
Okay. And I mean, in ISA too, I mean, the one thing, I know you kept it real estate specific, but I mean, in ISA, I mean, would you say they can be used in other industries?
Oh yeah, 100%. Sorry, I thought because I was talking, that was a point mistake. Oh,
No,
100%. You can do the car industry. Great thing there is like, for finance, for credit, bad credit, things like that, trying to help people get into that new vehicle. You could do it for, dentists, chiropractors, anything really where there's leads to be called to make that, get that prospect to the next step, which is the appointment and meeting the professional, basically.
I love it. I love it. So, now what do you feel like is the makeup of, good ISA? I mean, because of course, people are always looking for core. I mean, they're looking for core attributes. They're looking for their Chad. And they're looking for the next person that's going to help drive the organization. What do you think is like a good foundation for someone like as an ISA? What do you think should be their characteristics? What should their personality be like? And I know that's a huge question rolled into multiple little mini questions, but ultimately the question is, what makes a good ISA?
You got to be driven and motivated for sure. You don't have to have super high level like energy, like because sometimes that can not work in some areas and with some clients. Like I personally am high energy, but I've seen some really successful guys and women that are lower energy. But it's more of the driven and wanting. It's not like being like a telemarketer where you just make that appointment. You gotta want that desire to have that prospect, your appointment, to go to complete. To go through all the stages, not just the appointment. It's if it's a sale, someone selling their home, it's going to the listing and for the home to close. Because ultimately, you gotta want the same as the agent you're working for, and which is the only way they're going to be able to continue with the ISA is if they're making money. So making appointments really isn't the only thing that they should be focusing on.
So yeah, it's such a small. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, because that's such a small nuance to this. Because I mean, you could set all the appointments in the world, but of course, if the agent can't close the door, or if the ISA can't close the door, and they're not able to get them set up, it ends up being a really difficult time. And fortunately, I mean, of course, for us, all of our agents are amazing, and they do an amazing job when they meet with people. But, of course, I've talked with so many agents all over that have either hired an ISA and it was amazing, or they hired one and it was bad. A lot of cases, what I have found is that there's a lack there of a system. There's no system there, which means when there's no system, there's no procedure, there's no standard set of operations. And then a lot of times too, they're missing that piece of accountability. Would you say that accountability is very important for the role between the ISA and the agent?
Oh, 100%, 100%, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes areas where people will overlook having that system put in place for accountability. So in your opinion, I mean, because we've seen so many amazing implementations and we've seen ones that didn't go as according to plan. When do you feel it's best to hire an inside sales rep?
Well, it's obviously it's best to when you're looking to obviously grow, but essentially you need to have obviously core capital, because you can't look at thinking that the ISA is going to solve my financial problems or like immediate, because obviously there is that period which it takes to ramp up or whatever you want to say to get to the point where income's coming back in. So it's something that definitely, like, it's once I know it's for like the new agents out there, once you've got a couple of deals under your belt and your bank account is looking healthy, and you realize that the point that you yourself are making enough appointments where you're booking up enough that's taking up most of your time of the day, that's really the time when you realize that, hey, I'm not going to be able to go on all these appointments and do my time on the phone, because there's essentially a lot of like different slots that you need to be you'd have to like put aside to have the optimal pickup rate, conversation rate. So you would have to say, okay, if I'm doing it myself, I can't set an appointment at these times because otherwise I'm losing potential new business.
Yeah.
So that's when you would need an ISA.
It's so true. And I mean, I think what really makes us very unique, and it's funny because every time I talk to people after we get off the phone with them, they're usually like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." My goal is to educate. I want to educate them. I want to make sure that they understand what hiring an inside sales agent is all about. Why should they hire an ISA? And I don't ever push it on them because I feel like if it's the right fit, it's the right fit. And people are generally, now, of course, when it's the right situation is when, of course, I'm pleasantly persistent, just like we train our ISAs to do, to continuously follow up. But ultimately, it's up to the agent. It's up to it's up to the end user, basically, with when is going to be the right time. And of course, understanding that, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're not going to get immediate results as soon as you plug someone in. Now, we've seen it, but it takes some time usually. Usually it'll take, I've seen 1 month, 2 months, people getting listings within their first 1 to 2 months, and I've seen people go 5 or 6 months before they get their first listing. And in a lot of cases, then the ones that usually go longer are usually the ones that have a lower barrier, a lower threshold leads that aren't necessarily as motivated right away. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. The most successful agents that have ISAs are the ones with deep pockets, because they just have every bit of every lead coming in. And so,
True.
and in the end, they're the ones that are having the largest, return on an investment, because they're willing to spend.
Are old leads bad leads?
No. I like on expireds, I would say old expireds are better because they're not overworked. You see, you've got that period, you got that today's and yesterday's expireds, which you'd call and try to keep calling. Then that like third day to like, I don't know, 2 weeks, they've gone in, in hiding. And so you want to then jump back to the older leads, because obviously you'll come across them. Okay, I've already sold or whatever. But if you've got someone that was on the market, say in Christmas time, and they're still haven't sold, why the heck were they trying to sell in Christmas? And then you try to like reignite that their dreams of going wherever they were going, and try to get them realizing, hey, you know what? It would make sense to like rethink that and do it now, and we could help you get there.
So true. And in some cases, people just get burnt out from having to worry about, okay, I just got my house. It didn't sell with the last agent. It's now off the market. Or even a buyer where, okay, the weather's gotten bad. I've been looking for the past 3 months, and I've been working with every single agent, because a lot of agents don't have a special buyer's advantage agreement or something that is going to allow them to lock them in so they work exclusively with that buyer, which, by the way, I do highly recommend that you have them sign some sort of an agreement prior to going and showing them tons and tons of homes. But as far as the motivational element goes, and with older leads, I feel like older leads is where the money is. And it's so funny because I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday, and he was blown away by, he's like, wait, you guys don't call new leads? I go, no, of course we call new leads. I go, but we also call older leads. But that's where the money is, because those older leads, all of a sudden, if that lead was on, some of the more popular platforms, the Zillow, the Realtor.com, or maybe they were expireds, or maybe they were, at one point or another, they had their house up, but then it came off the market. So it's a very old expired, maybe a year or longer. That's where the gold is, because in a lot of cases, those people still have that running in the back of their mind that they want to sell, but at the time, it just maybe wasn't right timing. Maybe they had an agent that didn't market it the most effectively. Would you say you get a pretty good return on calling older and age leads for the clients?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, and like you said about, an expired, someone that's kind of like, just tired because they had it on so long. We just recently had one of our agents, and they had a listing from one of our appointments, and it was under contract in 48 hours, and there was more showings in the first day than the last 6 months it was with the other agent. So it goes to show I mean, obviously there's like any industry, there's the bad, the mediocre, the good, and the great, and that's just how it is.
And I think it really boils down to picking your spots. I mean, because in a lot of cases, what I have found is that there might be times where maybe, like for example, right now, inventory is at pretty much an all-time low. It has been and it's been like that for probably the past now year or two. I remember when I first started off personally as an ISA, home values were like literally had dropped. They had plummeted. We were just in recovery from the mortgage crisis meltdown, and I remember when the rates were always, they were very low, but at the same time, it wasn't even the rates that was affecting it. It was just the house values. So there was a lot of houses that were for sale, not a lot of buyers. Now it seems like every house that goes up pretty much gets eaten alive very quickly if it's priced right. And in a lot of cases, there's usually a frenzy for people competing for it. So if you're looking for ways, for everyone that's watching, I always like to give people actionable things that they can do. If you're looking for ways to increase inventory in your marketplace, one of the best things you can do is start doing what we call circle dialing or neighborhood dialing. Now, I will tell you, you're going to want to get an ISA for that. It is a very daunting task, but it's a very long-term return on investment game. One of our clients that we just actually he had an absolute amazing month, did about $3 million, really right around $3 million in volume, came from a lot of circle dialing efforts. So that in itself just goes to show that there's a lot in that calling around neighborhoods. But you got to remember, it is a very long-term game. Most people usually 7-8 months. I mean, Chad, you've done circle dials, of course. I mean, would you say 6, 7, 8 months before people start to see
the return
closing from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's because you got to work it, because obviously you've got to realize, like, you're phoning someone that has really maybe a slight thought about selling, but then you've kind of got to nurture them, through the process. But I love calling circle dial leads, because you've got someone generally that's not ever had a bad experience, and they're excited for you to help them, and in most cases you're helping them with both ends, and the first thing is if they're considering selling, your first end is to focus on why they would sell, apart from you calling them up, where do they want to go, and then you trying to find them their next dream move, in order because once you've got that locked in, they're so excited to go there, they obviously just let you sell their property, and so it can be very lucrative.
And you bring up a really great point, because a lot of the times these individuals that you're calling, there's not 15 other agents that have the name and number. Most of them don't even want to look at those leads, because they're like, oh hell, I'm not going to spend this amount of time to call these guys, because it is a very, very long-term game. But if you're willing to put in the long-term investment, it pays massive dividends. A couple of our clients have gotten over 15, I think 15, 16x return from just circle dialing. I mean, now granted though, it took well over a year to get there. It's not something that happens overnight. A lot of times people will expect that immediate instant gratification, which makes it tough. So yes, great points, Chad.
Oh yeah, and I remember that one I did last year at Circle Dial was 4 million, and that sold on Circle Dial. Yeah, so that obviously that agent was happy.
$100,000 payday, give or take. So not a bad thing, that's for sure.
And sorry to interrupt. It can be. You can kind of. There's also the point where it doesn't have to be a long game either. If you actually have, right now we have clients where we have buyers, real, true, not fake. Real buyers that are wanting to in a certain neighborhood. And they call, and we're making appointments, and the agent's taking them through, and we've had it where they've gone through, made an offer, accepted, and like that within a week. And then obviously there's a future closing date, and then that new person, then we help that person get their new home, and then we do the kind of the swap as such.
So in your opinion, Chad, I mean, with where the market is right now, and with, of course, obviously there is a massive need. But what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to, hiring an ISA?
Well, it's if they're in, dire straits where they're like financially in trouble and they think that this is the solution to, immediate solution to get out of the red or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because like you said, there's that period. I mean, there has been cases where we've gotten, the ISA's, first appointment with a new client, but it's not always the case. Those are the ones that, like I said, have deep pockets, have all these leads, and they're not in that stressed position, because if you're obviously in that mindset as well, when you go on the appointment as an agent, you're more likely going to fail anyways, even if we did make you the
So
appointment.
true.
So it's not that's not the solution. Also, if people think that, if they're struggling, they're making appointments but they're not closing deals, then it doesn't necessarily mean you need more appointments. It's probably you need
Mm,
to look at some other ways to, like, I don't know, to better your skills, to get some better skill sets,
sure.
with a coach, because I see a lot of the great agents out there, even if they're, the top, they still have a personal coach, you
So
know.
true.
So yeah, I mean, those are the main things I would say. And also, you need to know that if you want to be successful when you're hiring an ISA, you have to have communication. You
Yes.
can't just you can't just sign off and say, okay, I'm just gonna now disappear for 3 months and hoping that all these deals are gonna come out. Like, it's just that's just total failure there. And I can't stand that. It just drives me crazy when people
I
think
get
that.
it. Well, and even with where, I mean, I've noticed too, there's a common thread. The agents that do the best are the ones that they over communicate, where they're almost like they're sending us emails consistently. They're giving us, we're getting an email every other day from them, or every couple of days. We're setting up a weekly meeting with them. They're going through, which we use a Trello board, which by the way, Jasmine Ramirez, who is awesome, the actually gave us one of the biggest. It was probably one of it's the smallest hinges that swing the biggest doors, and this was a small thing that she told us about, but it literally changed everything we were doing within our business. Was using a Trello board, because in Trello you can go in, you can have the name of the person, all their information in one place, and then the agent can see it real time, go in, they can update it, make notes on it, so we know what's happening from the beginning to the end. That in itself is such a game changer. And I believe that that is one of the main reasons why having that feedback loop, closing that feedback loop, and then knowing what happened. And then, of course, our ISAs will call after the appointment to make sure that things went smoothly. It makes such a difference. So I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, communication is key. It's like everything. It's the cornerstone of every relationship. If you've got a relationship with someone, but you're not communicating with them, chances are that that relationship won't go as smoothly as you'd like. Some other mistakes I've seen people make when hiring an in-house an in-house and virtual ISA. We're going to talk about that, because that's always. And I'm going to give you, of course, yes, I may have a little bit of a biased opinion because I have a virtual inside call center, but I was also an in-house ISA. So we're going to debunk this because there is a myth out there that the virtual ISAs are no good and that an in-house ISA is the only way to go. We're going to debunk that because I've got some stats, some numbers, and some things to actually show people that will actually give you a little bit more of a difference in terms of how you look at it. But as far as one of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make when they hire an ISA is they hire their best buddies or their friends. And it's good if you become friends. I look at everybody that works with us as family. And of course, once everyone works with us, we become like a big dysfunctional family. But at the end of the day, if you're hiring on somebody who's a good buddy of yours or a good friend, a lot of times it's really difficult to manage them. Chad, I mean, you've been in a lot of management roles before. Have you ever hired on a good friend or a pal of yours, or seen it happen and then things sort of just go a little sideways?
Oh, I mean, when I was really young, I didn't hire. I like, I referred a friend to a company, and obviously he was terrible and he got fired. So it's like I realized early on that what, it's best just to to leave family and friends on their own.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying on their own, you can help them and guide them, but not working with myself. No, I would never. It just yeah.
It's so true. And so I want to ask you this question, and this is one, and again, I mean, as when it comes to hiring a virtual ISA or an in-house ISA, which one do you think is better? And again, you don't. I want you to answer as open and real as you can, because there's a lot of factors here. But go ahead.
No,
I'm
I mean
curious.
a virtual, because what you're not just getting the ISA when you get virtually. If you
Yeah.
hire in-house, yeah, you then have to have, like, because for the virtually we have admin, we have account managers, we have coaches, trainers, everything else that goes into making sure they're at they're at the top of their game. So whereas if you hire in-house, you got 8 hours, you got all these other you know financial things that go with having someone in-house. And yeah, and it's most likely the way that we have it at appointments today is we have really some really top people that obviously don't live in the US or Canada, because they're expats, and they're where they would have their cost if they were in-house would be so high. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
high.
true.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a great question, because it's one of these myths that have been out there so long for what's better, in-house, virtual. And I've talked with so many people that said I've hired an in-house and it was horrible. I hired a virtual and it was horrible. Well, a lot of cases, and here's what I've realized. So I was very fortunate when I first got started. I started with Al Stasic. He's an amazing agent here in Cleveland, and I'm going to actually have him on here very soon in one of our episodes, that we could talk a little bit more about building a team and culture and how to grow. But the one thing that really was different with him was that he had USPs, unique selling propositions, things that helped him differentiate from other agents in the marketplace. Hell, I think he was one of the first ones that did a guaranteed buyout program, or he had a guaranteed where if your home didn't sell, he'd buy it. And that program in itself was a game changer, because it opened up doors. It allowed me to get in it allowed me to facilitate when I made the calls. I had something real juicy to offer, and it opened up so many more doors. Now, there's so many different USPs. If you're not comfortable with that one, because there are a lot of people that aren't really comfortable with that unique selling proposition, totally get it. There's communication guarantees. There's, basically if you ever want out of the agreement, if you're not happy, you can go. I mean, there's so many different ones out there. And what I will say is, the difference between what's better, virtual or an in-house, I'm going to say it depends. And the reason why I'm going to say it depends is because if you have the infrastructure in place in-house, which very few people do, by the way, but if you have an agent who is running the listing appointments, you have agents that are running the buyer appointments, and then you have an operational leader that basically their main objective is to make sure that everything, the tracking is dialed in, make sure they know the ins and outs of everything within the organization. And then in addition to that, you also need to have a sales manager, someone that's going to hold the agents and the ISA accountable. An in-house ISA would be a very good way to go if you have that type of structure, but very, very few people have it. Where with us, you don't just have an ISA, because if you're just hiring, I will say this, if you directly go in and say, I'm going to hire somebody on my own, and they're going to be working from home or they're in a different location, that can be a recipe for disaster. And I mean, you could look at that person as an in-house, but if you don't have the infrastructure in place, it makes it very difficult. So with a strong infrastructure means you're going to be able to get those results that you're looking for. What is a strong infrastructure? Having someone that does quality control. They listen to the calls. They monitor. They give feedback. They give training and coaching, a sales manager, a trainer. Having that accountability piece, but having your metrics dialed in and knowing what success looks like, that is what makes the difference between a good ISA implementation versus a bad ISA implementation. And I would challenge anybody that you can get an average at best ISA, but if your systems and your operations and your accountability is top notch, that average ISA is going to play at a level of an excellent ISA. And the reason for that is because that accountability and everything that goes into place with that is going to make a world of difference. And I know that was a lot to digest and unpack, but having the right systems and tools makes a huge difference. So that was that in itself was something I've been wanting to just debunk for quite some time. Chad, in your opinion, what should you expect from a successful ISA?
In the terms of return?
Yeah, in return, I mean, just
I mean, I guess in the first year, 3 to 4 times. Yeah.
3 to 4. Oh, 3 to 4 times return on investment.
On return on investment, yeah, ROI, yeah.
Got it.
I would say,
now,
yeah.
And see, when calculating ROI, it's funny because I always hear people, some are like, oh, well, if I put the leads in there, then it's a little lower. You're going to have those leads anyways. I mean, in most cases, it's very rare. Like almost everyone that we talk to, it's rare that they don't have some sort of expired lead generation, or they don't have some Facebook leads, or they're not doing some sort of pay-per-click. So I wouldn't recommend adding in your lead cost in there because chances are you'd have those anyways. But if you're going to calculate a sheer return on the person, you want to look at, okay, if I'm paying this person, let's say $40,000 a year, and that person has produced $120,000 in closings for me, that was a 3 times return on investment. 3x, I feel like, is kind of your core staple. And then, of course, as that person progresses and grows, or your system progresses and grows, and you get more people in the seats, then you can start scaling this out where you can get 300 times your money, 400 times your money. Because let's face it, I mean, 3 to 4 times return, that's the equivalent of 300% return or 400%, which is always great. If, Chad, if you want to start, I'll give you $1, you give me 4 back. I'd take that deal every single time. So
of course,
I'm sure you would too. So as far as finding an ISA, where do you think people can kind of go to find an ISA in your opinion? I mean, aside from appointments today, of course, but where could they go if they want to maybe find somebody locally? What are your thoughts?
Oh, you mean in-house?
Yeah, well, in-house or even virtual, but yeah, like, I mean, virtual, we're here. So, but as far as in-house, if they wanted to go in-house, how would they find the person?
Oh, I imagine your best is to go and advertise online. I see, with a lot of the big agents, I guess they advertise online with that Indeed, things like that, stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. And then obviously it's then having a process to kind of like vet through all because you'll get a lot of people applying, and it's knowing when who qualifies for the next steps or next stages of like the interview or as we have those in-depth online exams before which people have to take before we even they get to the stage where we look at if they even qualify for an interview, and then so on and so on.
So I really want to unpack this, and I'm glad that you brought up the exam. So guys, there's a couple of different places. You can go to Wonderlic, which is actually the same thing that NFL players take. It's called the Wonderlic test. There's the .com for that. We also use one. It's called Criteria Corp. I will tell you though, just kind of full disclosure, these things cost, I mean, they're pretty expensive. They generally cost a few $1,000s to invest in. That's something though that we invest in for long term, because we know that if anybody can look good on paper, you can doctor up a resume. You can say that you were, attorney, doctor, you're the, NASA scientist. Like, you can put the greatest disclaimers, descriptions about yourself. And then if you don't go that extra mile to verify all of that, it's very challenging to get the right person. So what we found is that we'll literally test people for aptitude. We'll test them for their ability to type, to handle online, internet, just different applications, make sure that they're able to be computer literate, because that's very important. And then, of course, lastly, we do a sales personality profile assessment. And that in itself, I mean, is a game changer. So, and I'll actually put in there, guys, a couple of different links that you can go to for that. But ultimately, I think that if you're in the market to get an ISA, you got to invest in a testing system. And then I'm going to give you guys one other that's a total game changer. We use something called Colby Type A, which is great because it's going to allow you to figure out what that person naturally is very good at and where their, of course, where their attention goes, their energy flows. It is a way to see what someone is naturally good at prior to prior to school. Actually, it's like from when they're young. So it's going to allow you to know if you're putting the right person in the seat. The DISC assessment is good as well, but I will say that's a very, I hate to use the word antiquated, but it's very easy to trick a DISC assessment, where with these tests that we have, it's merely impossible. So I think that's really important that people know. And of course, if you're looking for ISAs as well, another great place is ask your vendors, ask your affiliates, your partners. If they got a mortgage company, maybe they know somebody who's good on the phone. If they've got a title company, they might know somebody who's good on the phone. It's anyone that can be a vendor or an affiliate. Ask them, find them, and figure out who is good, because chances are they're going to know some people that might be looking or are good, and it would make it a little easier if you have somebody with their hand up saying, hey, this person's good. But again, if you're going to go that route, you got to have a strong infrastructure, which I'm thinking we might put a training together in for what an infrastructure should look like and kind of do an A to Z. That's a future idea.
And another advantage that we have is that when we do hire for training, we hire groups, and ultimately they don't all succeed, because people can be good in interviews. So you could that's kind of the difficulties you could with hiring an inside salesperson. You could hire them, and you'd have to go through 3 to 6 months and realize, what, they're not getting any better. You've made a mistake, and you've invested all that money and time and everything, and then you have to go back to the drawing board and start over at So that's where we're coming to us, because that's how we hire in big groups, and just narrow it down to make sure that everyone that starts on the phone is at the highest level.
And it's funny because Kristen put in here, that's the kiss of death, where you hire someone in house and then you're kind of stuck because you're like, well, geez, I have all these leads coming in, and I don't want to have to restart over from the beginning. I think that's really where the magic happens when you're hiring someone that is running a virtual company. It's interchangeable. And the great thing about it is it's our system that really sets it apart. It's not just one singular inside sales rep. It's the system. Having the system, having the checks and balances, having the accountability in place, making sure that these guys are constantly striving to get better day in and day out. So really, really great point. So lastly, just, and Chad, because again, I always want to add as much value on this as I can. You've been in the trenches. Even recently, you've seen a lot of really good lead performing systems. And of course, you can have average leads and get amazing results if you have the right people and right systems in place. I do believe that. But of course, if the leads are really bad and the data is terrible, it might be tough.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What's your thoughts on some lead generation that is going well right now? Aside from the one, of course, we provide leads as well, which, shameless plug there. But what do you think is pretty good?
The worst thing is a lot of it seems to be different locations with different platforms and how they're generating leads and collecting the data. But I mean, for expireds, Vulcan, Mojo, you have Vortex, and a lot of the good agents now are the ones that are successful. They have 1, 2, and maybe 3 different platforms pulling the same data and trying to cross-reference it so to see where there's the differences in the phone numbers. Because ultimately, the goal is live answers to correct data to conversations. That's where everything is. Then you have all these other these other sources. You can have ZBuyer, which works with some people. I've had really great success. HomeLight. You have Referral Exchange. You have Fast Home Offer. Fast Home Offer is great, but you pay for the lead up front, but you're supposed to be the sole agent receiving it, and it's got a high value per lead. There's all those different things. I work, myself. I still do dialing, and some of the, the top agents, they have every lead source. Everything.
Well, yeah, not everybody can get, not
No, I
everyone
know.
has, yeah. So a couple of things. So number one, we provide, so just so everyone knows, if you're looking for really good buyer data, we actually have we have a company that we've partnered with that will provide amazing buyer data. And they are, now generally, like all buyer data, I have to, of course, put this disclaimer out there. They're not all ready to move right now. Some of them are going to be 3 months, 6 months. You might even have some 12-month people in there. So, but it's all about the continuous follow-up, that continuous being pleasantly persistent and staying in front of them and just doing everything that you can to get in front of them, and making sure that you have a consistent process and a system in place to do it. A couple of comments I just wanted to touch on. And Stephanie hit the nail on the head. That's one of the benefits of hiring an inside sales company. We do the vetting for you, so you don't have to put the time and money in to find someone if it's really, and make sure if it's really the best fit or not. And yeah, if it's a bad fit in-house, it's really difficult to fix that. So you've got to have something in place to ultimately offset that. And in most cases, what most people end up doing is they have to go back to the drawing board or have to rehire, have to go back through the entire interview process, and it's a nightmare. So it's definitely an advantage when you've got the opportunity to go virtual, because it is much, much easier, in my opinion. So what I wanted to share with everybody as well, if you want more information on what we do, you can go to www.appointmentstoday.com. And you can also go to, if you want to just get a little bit more information on just myself, you can also go to www.mattmilia.com. And while you're in there, guys, you'll get the information that you need. And if you want to, of course, we're on YouTube. You can look me up on YouTube. You can follow all of our stuff. I've got videos on how to hire an ISA. I've got videos on questions to ask. I even have videos of live calls that came from ISA. So I really think that would be very impactful for everyone that is looking to hire or have thought about it, or maybe have had a really tough time finding the right person. So Chad, any words of wisdom or anything you want to share before we close things out?
No, I mean, I think you're nailing it. You said it before, as being persistent, to that level where you're almost, politely pushy, persistently pushy, and it's keep pushing and pushing, because they're ultimately there's everyone at one point is looking to sell or buy, and it's just making sure that you're the one that's contacting them when that moment is, or you push them to that level with true motivation.
So true. So true. Well, everybody, I appreciate you all tuning in. Stay tuned next week. And we had to move this one to Thursday just for this week, because there was another event that was going on yesterday. However, next week will be same time at Wednesday at 12 o'clock EST. And again, as always, I appreciate all of you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Of course, Chad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will see you guys all next week. Take care.
Take care.